Welcome! Hello to all our readers joining us once again for our Thursday night book talks. We are very excited to have you here, and we cannot wait to talk about some of these books that we chose specifically for tonight. On the list, you can check out the website and see the titles and the authors in case we go a little bit too fast, and then that way you can go back. Um, to start with, I wanted to start tonight because I just read a duology of books. That's two books in a series. And I thought it was actually very timely for what's happening right now in the world, in the United States, but I mean, as a global presence as well in the world. Thinking about how we are constantly surrounded by things that are told to us, things that we even read, and a lot of times we don't question the validity of it. We don't question whether or not it's correct. And even if we do see something and we see it posted two or three other places, it's gotten to the point in our society where even that is sometimes hard to trust. It's even hard to trust when you see a video at times. And so it is so much more important nowadays for all of us, especially younger people, to really go out and fact check and question things and read and find the truth for yourself, not just the truth that somebody tells you. And so that leads me to my first book talk that I'm going to talk about. And the first book that came in the series is called Verify, and it's by Joelle Charbonneau. Adrian just nodded, so I think I got it right. Joelle Charbonneau. And I read, she wrote the Testing series. If you read the Testing series a few years ago, she also wrote a duology, Dividing Eden. And so she wrote this. And I'm a huge Fahrenheit 451 fan by Ray Bradbury. I love that book. It is probably one of my top 10. And I read the summary of Verify, and I was like, oh my God, I need to read this because it's about somewhat of a dystopia, and it's very, it alludes a lot to Fahrenheit 451 in many different ways. And you can see with the book on the cover, the V for Verify, and then the flames coming out. It harkens back to Fahrenheit 451. But anyway, Verify starts the story about our character, Mary Beckley. And she is a high schooler, and she's just your typical high schooler. This is in a future not so distant from us. And she lives in Chicago. And this world now, we have everything is online. All of our textbooks are online. All of our news media that we get is all online. Sound familiar? It should, because we're very close to that. And there's no paper books. And the reason is just because it's better for the earth. If we don't have paper, we don't have to worry about recycling it. And it's just everything is electronic. So we've cleaned up. And we have these beautiful cities. And like Chicago is nothing. I'm not dissing Chicago. But in this world of Verify, Chicago is almost like a utopia. It's beautiful. It's kept clean. They have artists who are employed by the government to paint murals. And it's just, everybody is happy. One of the things, though, is that Mary finds out after her mother is killed and her mother dies, and this is like in the beginning of the book, so it's no spoiler, okay? She finds out that people don't really question anything because Mary has some questions about, well, what happened to my mom? And nobody really wants to answer her. And then one day she comes across a piece of paper. Again, remember, paper's not a thing anymore. She comes across a piece of paper and it says Verify on it. And she has never heard this word before. Now, Verify might not be a word that you use in your everyday vocabulary, but she has no idea what this word is. She's never heard this word. And what she gets, she's taken into the life of like the stewards, and they're the ones, they take care of the written word. And come to find out that in the society where we're now living, that since everything's electronic, everything can also be edited. And the words that aren't needed, the words that are too important to know, are taken out. They are basically redacted. Nobody knows what they mean anymore. So the word verify, which is to seek out the truth, nobody knows what that word is at all. So Mary gets taken into this and she starts to find the truth for herself. So it ends and I was like, oh my God, it's so good. And it ends and it's like, okay, it's cool. I didn't think there was going to be a sequel. And then lo and behold, just in the past couple months, Disclose came out. And it takes the next level. You see, you know, we have the book on fire with the V, and now we have the flame, the spark that is starting the fire of everything. And it takes Mary's story even further. And I just found it very interesting, this idea about how close we are to having our world edited around us. And we don't even realize it. Like the word revolution, they knew what the word revolution meant about like when it rotates, like the revolution of the earth around the sun and so forth. However, they didn't know the meaning of the word revolution when it means to fight for one's rights or to go up against something. So to think about that, and I thought these were two timely books to really talk to you all about, because I think in today's day and age, it is definitely something that we should all be doing, questioning what we read, questioning what we see, questioning what we hear, because we don't want to get to a society where everything's electronic and we can have our history around us edited as we're living it. So with that, I now pass it on to my friend Adrienne.
Thank you, Misty. My first book today is Cemetery Boys, such a pretty cover, by Aiden Thomas. There was a lot of buzz before this even came out. I got it the day it was released in September. It's already been longlisted for the 2020 National Book Awards. It tells the story of 15-year-old Yadriel, who is a gay trans boy. He struggles to be accepted as a male member of his Latinx community. At the age of 16, he's 15 when the book starts, but the age of 16, the males and females in Yadriel's traditional family take part in their celebration, where you undergo a ritual to officially join the Bruix. Females become brujas, the healers, and males become brujos, the summoners of spirits. Now, his dad is fine with him becoming a bruja, but Yadriel knows that he wants to prove to his family that he is a real brujo. He's been talking about this for years. His family's been kind of pushing him off. He goes with his best friend, who's like the best character in the book. He goes to summon a spirit to prove to his family that he can do it. And he is stuck with Julian Diaz, who is the school bad boy he recognizes from school. But Yadriel didn't really know him prior to this meeting. And also nobody realizes that he's dead because it just happened. So this was a really powerful coming of age story. It's centered on the three main concepts of acceptance, identity, and love. Yadriel craves acceptance into his family so much, which makes every instance of him being misgendered and dead named even more heartbreaking, because his family is really kind of trying. They've accepted that part of him, but they haven't accepted the fact that he wants to be a brujo. We also get to see his journey with like a more of acceptance of himself and his identity, what that means. Julian is an integral part of this journey. Their conversations surrounding that journey are something that needs to be normalized. I think it's really good to see two males. You don't see a lot of like strong male friendships, and this was one of them. When it comes to the part about love in the book, it's much more than romantic love. There's familial love and platonic love between he and his best friend. It's an own voices story. The author really delves into the rich culture of the Latinx community in regards to gendered language and the effect it has on gender identity. There's a lot of talk of Dia de Muertos, and not just sugar skulls, but other things. Oh, the food, they talk about the food. It makes you hungry just to read the book. The indigenous history and everything like that. All of it was so amazing. It's set in South Central LA, but there was a lot that reminded me of the culture of the Southwest. The world building, the magic in this book, it's beautifully crafted. I love that the magic system has a cost, because a lot of times when we hear about books that have magic in them, it's like, well, why can't you cure cancer? Or why can't you do this? And they deal with that in the book. The price for doing life-saving magic is very steep in this book. And Thomas addresses that not everybody's willing to pay the price to do life-saving magic. I'm just blown away that this story was a debut novel because it was just amazing. I give it a very rare 5 out of 5 stars. And now I'm going to my friend Steve.
Hi, everybody. First book I'm going to talk about tonight is the graphic novel Doomsday Clock. This is the sequel to Watchmen. So it has just recently been collected all together as one graphic novel. And this is written by Jeff Johns. He's written probably for most major DC characters, and he's popular for revitalizing lesser known characters and putting new interesting spins on them. But Doomsday Clock pays homage to Alan Moore's Watchmen and continues that story in a very interesting way. It pays homage by having lots of the pages in that classic Dave Gibbons is not the author on it, the illustrator on this. Gary Frank is, but Dave Gibbons illustrated Watchmen in the 1980s, and he had a very distinct style with most pages have these 9 panels, very linear, the occasional break from that, and then the chapters in between, it's 12 chapters, but at the ends of chapters, there are articles and back matter that build on extending the world of the universe of this story. So then when you read the next chapter, there's just stuff that has been explained for you or expounded upon in the inter chapters, if you will. But the premise for this is this is a sequel to Watchmen. So if you haven't read Watchmen, you really need to read that first. But Dr. Manhattan, one of the main characters from Watchmen, he has been rewriting history of the DC universe. So, of course, you have those typical part of the plot where as the timeline moves forward, the same timeline that is revisionist history that is Watchmen, you have another impending doom of nuclear war from Russia this time. Meanwhile, Dr. Manhattan has been rewriting the DC universe. So all the DC universe characters come into play in this. Batman and all these other characters, and Superman is a pivotal part of this because, as you can see from the cover, and I don't want to spoil too much, but as you start reading, you sort of, wait a minute, is Dr. Manhattan or Superman the villain here? What's what? This just does a great job paying respect to Watchmen and building on the whole comic book DC universe. This is a masterpiece. It's like I refer to Watchmen as the Hamlet of comics. This is basically Hamlet Part 2. So if this is up your alley, I highly recommend it. I'm going to turn it over to Katie. Go ahead.
Thanks, dude. Hi, that's me. Welcome back, people. My name is Katie. Many a time we have talked about how much this group loves fantasy novels. We have talked about how we love fairy tale retellings. So I particularly love those because they're my version of escaping. Our world these days, this week, this month, this year has been really crazy and really uncertain and really hectic. And one thing that I do that I sort of retreat back to in a moment of chaos and confusion is fairy tale retellings and fantasy novels. And that's my book that I'm going to talk about for tonight. It is a brand new book released a couple of weeks ago called Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. Ashley Poston has popped up several times in our book talks. She is the author of the Once Upon a Con series. I talked about Geekorella, and my friend Amanda a couple weeks ago talked about the next one is another fairy tale retelling, and I can't remember what the name of it is, so I hope one of my friends puts it in chat, and I'll tell you what it is before I pass it on to the next person. But this is a brand new book from Ashley Poston. It's about a young girl named Ceres. Ceres is the daughter of the kingdom's gardener. Her father's the gardener for the palace. But the palace sits on the edge of this wood that has been cursed. So there is a plague that happens to you. You get sick, black seeds in your neck, and you turn into a crazy monster and you pretty much die. if you get wood cursed. And it wasn't always so. The woods used to be a bountiful, plentiful place, but the king of their land went and defeated all the monsters, and he got this crown and saved everybody. And lo and behold, Ceres's best friend, the daughter of the king, who's set to inherit the kingdom, on the evening of her coronation, becomes infected and is wood cursed. She turns into a crazy monster. Ceres takes the crown with her fox-like companion. I say fox-like, but he's actually a real little fox, follows her around, and they run into the forest trying to figure out how to save the world from this wood curse that has taken over her family. It has taken over her village. She's lost her best friend. She lost her mother 8 years prior to this wood curse. So she's headed for the kingdom of Vorin in the middle of the forest, which is the place where the crown originated. So this book, Misty was talking about her book a minute ago, being really sort of connected to our current world and the struggles we as a country and as a people are going through. And this book made me think of that as well. But Katie, it's a fantasy novel. How can it possibly be connected to reality? I'm so glad you asked, constant listener. I will be happy to tell you. When Ceres and her companions reach Vorin, it is not the way they've been told. They have been told for years and years and years that Vorin is a deep, dark forest city and everybody's heathens who lives there. And the city is just like it's a normal city. There are not mountains of jewels. The scenery is very beautiful, but it is not the way they have been told for years and years and years. So this book is also sort of what Misty was talking about, is that you can't believe everything you've been told. If you find out the truth about a thing, then you have to turn around and question it. And then it leads you to more questions and more questions in life, which is 100% fine. You should be questioning things you've been told. So Ceres learns the truth about her own kingdom. She learns the truth about how to set her kingdom free from the wood curse. She sets the forest free. She sets her own kingdom free. There's a romance involved, but I didn't hate it. Sometimes I don't like romances for the sake of romances, but Ashley Poston does a great job of intertwining this romance as a friendship, as she's done in her other books, Geekerella and The Princess and the Fangirl. That's the book I was trying to think of. Thanks, friends, for putting that in the chat that my friend Amanda talked about 2 weeks ago. The other thing that I really like, the sort of universal message from this book, is that if you find out the truth of your world, and you may find out that the world is not perfect and the world sucks, you have the power to change the world. Ceres is just a little gardener, the daughter of a gardener. What on earth could she do? She thinks that the entirety of the book. Turns out she has the power to save the world, and she does. It also sets it up really nicely for a sequel, so we'll have to wait a long while for it. But this book, because this book did just drop in the middle of October, but I am anxiously awaiting the sequel, I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. A pleasant escape into fantasy while also still being beautifully grounded in the real world. So that's my book talk for tonight, my friends. Your next host is Adrian. Adrian, take it away.
Thank you, Katie. My second book, I love this cover because it's like makes you want to go buy a jean jacket and put pins on it. It's called Undead Girl Gang. It's by Lily Anderson. It's snarky, hilarious, body positive, heartbreaking, gory, spooky, all the above. She does a great job of mixing humor with sadness, because when we first meet Mila, this again won't spoil anything because it's page 1, she is at her best friend's funeral. So it starts out really sad. Riley isn't just Mila's best friend, she's her only friend. So we feel this loneliness, this loss, even without knowing Riley, because we can all imagine losing the person that we're closest with. The police have already ruled her death a suicide, but Mila doesn't agree, so she sets out to find Riley's killer. So the book is a murder mystery. I loved that I did not figure out who it was until right before the reveal, which I usually do, so that's always nice. The real heart of the book is right there in the title. It's all about the Undead Girl Gang. Mila and Riley are Wiccans, and she's very sad. She goes to the place where they buy their magic supplies, and explains, well, and kind of asks, well, is there anything to bring back the dead? And the woman gets very upset and says that's not what Wicca's about. And then she goes to this little abandoned house that they've been hanging out at. And there's a UPS delivery, which I love because it's like when the Amazon packages come. And in it is a old grimoire of spells, which has a spell to resurrect the dead. So Mila brings Riley back, but she accidentally also brings back 2 other mean girls from their high school who died in what people thought was a double suicide 4 days before Riley died. So she brings back them all 3 at once. Their names are June and Dayton, which sets off a compelling story about the 4 girls dealing with issues like friendship, betrayal, misogyny, body issues, racism, things like that. They've always made fun of Mila and Riley, so it's kind of interesting how they, work as a team to find out the killer. Anderson creates really unique, relatable female characters, even with zombies running around, which I thought was really cool. And she proves, I think, that high school girls are people with complex inner lives, and they should be taken seriously, as the same as older under male counterparts. What I liked, one of the things that I liked the best in the book, that it wasn't just a redemption arc with the 4 girls. They're mean girls. It's not just the whodunit, the relationships between the girls as they evolve and grow. Dayton, one of the dead girls, was Riley's childhood bully, and June is a white girl who has a history of racism towards Mila, who's one of the only Hispanic girls at her school. So they become less bitchy as the story goes on and kind of form this friendship of sorts. But it's not just like, oh, give snobs and racists a chance. It's more, it shows that all people are flawed and complicated. Most people have some good in them if they can stop being ignorant and self-absorbed enough. But I really liked it. The relationship between Mila and Riley, I think, was the best part of the book. They've only been apart for a few days, but the emotional distance that Mila feels when she brings Riley back from the dead, like she knows it's only for 7 days. It's vast and immediate. They're already different. It's like when you lose a friendship in high school and you're never getting it back again. It just, I don't know, that part made me kind of cry. You can't figure out why or how it happened. It's a quick read. I finished it in, a day and a half. The characters are intriguing, relatable. She didn't lose my attention for a second. Mila's a really unique heroine. She faces this world full of grief and loss and everything that she's going through. She's afraid that, she's done this spell that's kind of out of her league, but she manages to confront it with some strength, some powerful magic. She has a lot of attitude. So hope I didn't spoil any because it's a really good read. I give it a 3 out of 4 stars. And now back to Steve.
Hi again. Second book I'm going to talk about is Ghost Boys by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And I just bought this book last week. I read it in one evening. It's like 200 pages. It reads super quick. It looked like an interesting premise. But what made me buy it was Angie Thomas said it's a must read. And I've read the Angie Thomas books on the come up and Hate You Give. And I was really blown away by this little book. It's a story of 12-year-old Jerome, African-American kid in his neighborhood who is opening of the book. Unfortunately, he's a victim of a police shooting. And then he becomes a ghost. The story moves forward with 2 timelines back and forth, dead and alive. So all the events, what's happening in Jerome's life, like when he's a ghost after he's died and leading up to when he's died. And it's just powerful. It sounds kind of complex with those 2. Oh, and the other thing is he discovers that there are other ghost boys who are basically other Black boys of police violence and hate violence. And one of the key figures there is Emmett Till. And this book does a beautiful job. You find out that all these ghosts are still stuck in the afterlife, if you will. They can't pass on until, you know, the world becomes a better place when it comes to this, if you will. So Jerome becomes the daughter, Sarah, of the daughter of the police officer who shot him, can see him. So he forms a bond and becomes friends with Sarah. And what's happening then is there's a court case for the police officer. This book does a great job, though, of not just boldly taking one side of the issue. I'm not going to spoil it for you what happens with the outcome of that court case, but I think she does a nice, delicate balance there of exploring the issue. I mean, basically, this book takes kind of an interesting ghost story, if you will. Kind of feels like a children's ghost story, something I would read like out of a Neil Gaiman book, but thrown into the like also retelling and recapping historical events, because Emmett Till is one of the ghosts, and you get to the kind of climaxes kind of coexist and they meet up at Emmett Till being able to tell his story of what really happened to him to Jerome, and then Jerome making that connection with Sarah, and then the outcome of the court case. And Sarah, through the friendship of Jerome, she starts to change her whole mindset, and she becomes like an advocate for social justice. And it's beautiful how this author, how Rhodes basically weaves in that historical context with the modern social politics of today, and just writes this beautiful, touching story. I was just really, it really touched me. I'm interested in reading her other books. I think she has one coming out that's called Towers Falling. And that is like a story about all the events surrounding 9/11. So this is a great read. I mean, I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 stars. It's a bit of a younger reader book, but it has a lot to say and it get conversations going. Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Deborah. Thanks.
Hello, peeps. So tonight I'm going to take you back into the past with an author that we haven't heard from for a while. It's Orson Scott Card. Card wrote Ender's Game a number of years ago, and he wrote an even better book called Ender's Shadow. But Orson Scott Card likes to write about kids who are probably too smart for their own good. So they don't fit in very well with the society that they currently find themselves in. So Ender's Game took place in a future world, and it's a lot about virtual reality. Lost and Found, which is the book I'm going to talk about now, is a little different. It takes place in the here and now. And I will show you a cover. I don't have the book with me at the moment, but I do have the cover. It looks like this. And it is basically about a young boy who's 14 years old. His name is Ezekiel. He doesn't fit in because he's way too smart for his own good. He's a little snarky. And he probably is on the spectrum somewhere. And Ezekiel has not a superpower, but a micropower. So his micropower is that he can find lost things. So if Ezekiel is walking down the street and sees a scrunchie, he can pick it up and gets a sense of maybe who lost that scrunchie. This has not worked out well for him, though, because whenever he returns things to their owners, they think, yeah, you just stole it. So it's gotten him in trouble with the police. It's gotten him in trouble with parents. So pretty much he just doesn't talk about it anymore. Well, one day Ezekiel's walking to school and he starts to be followed by a young girl. It looks like an elementary school kid. Turns out to be another high schooler who suffers from, and I had to look this up, proportionate dwarfism. So she's just a tiny person who is actually 14 years old and looks like she's in 3rd grade. Her name is Beth, and she becomes friends with Ezekiel. She's about as smart as he is, which is good. She's the only one who can understand him. So the plot goes along, and one day a young girl in their town goes missing, and the detectives get wind that Ezekiel can find lost things. And so they come up to, one of the detectives finds him and says, you got to help me find this little girl. So he decides that he's going to develop his superpower. He even goes to a support group. It's not a superpower, sorry, it's a micropower. So the support group is like micropowers are us or whatever. And it's all these people who have these bizarre, tiny little powers, and they're learning to use them. Ezekiel learns to develop his power and use it, and he finds this young girl who was kidnapped. However, then Beth goes missing, his friend. So the rest of the book centers around his solving the mystery of where did she go and who took her. So I loved it. I liked Ezekiel, especially after the first 2 or 3 chapters. He's very verbal, which I love, and so he plays around with words. It's not really a story about the supernatural as much as it is a story about a 14-year-old boy who doesn't have any friends, doesn't really know who he is, doesn't know where he fits in, and by the end of the book, he manages to find all that. The adults in the book are great, especially the ones who support him. That's the detective and his father. And I really liked it. It was a little bit different from Ender's Game, but Orson Scott Card did a good job with it. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. If it were a 10-point scale, I'd maybe give it an 8 out of 10. So you might look for it. It just came out last year, 2019. So Orson Scott Card, Lost and Found. And I'm going to turn it back to Misty.
All right, Heidi ho, neighborinos. All right, so we have had some great books tonight. And it's so weird because we never really talk about what books we're going to share until the day before. And our illustrious leader, Katie, is really good about sending out texts and saying, yo, peeps, what titles are you going to talk about? And it's like, oh, yeah, we should probably decide that. But it's really cool how we haven't read, all of each other's books, but yet they somehow overlap and they have these commonalities through them. So I think my last book might take a little bit of a divergent path from everybody else's because, it's just good. I just don't know what else to say about it. It is Kingdom of the Wicked. Now, this book is new. It just came out a couple weeks ago, and it is by Carrie Maniscalco. And I don't even know if I said that right, but whatever. You may remember that I talked about her because she also wrote the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, where it's Stalking Jack the Ripper and hunting Prince Dracula, escaping from Houdini, and capturing the devil. So loved those books. And this one is a new one that just came out. And it just sounded really cool. And so I'm just going to give you a brief overview of it because I really think everybody should, I don't think everybody should read it. I don't like it when people tell me you should read this. It's awesome. So I'm just going to tell you this. If you dig witches and you dig demons and you dig like the 7 deadly sins, this book is for you because it takes all of this together and puts it in this nice little package. And this package, actually, his name is Wrath, in case you did not know. That's one of the 7 deadly sins. But it starts out with 2 twins, Amelia and Victoria, and they are witches, and something tragic happens, and Amelia has to then find out who kills her sister. That's the tragic part. And you would think that, hey, I just gave it away, but it's literally in the beginning. When you read the summary, it's right there. It tells you it happens in the first couple of chapters. So anyway, and so it's really cool because what I really like is that the Kingdom of the Wicked are actually the 7 princes of hell. And what the author does in this one is she takes the 7 princes of hell, and what they actually are is they are the 7 demons, and each of the 7 sins, one demon represents one of the 7 deadly sins. And so it kind of ties back into this biblical lore about demons and Satan and Lucifer and whatnot. And so the princes of hell, Amelia meets Wrath, who, that's one of them. And so in the book, the princes, we have lust, gluttony, sloth, greed, wrath, envy, and pride. And so I dig it. It's really cool. I love books about angels and demons. I know Katie has talked about books about angels and demons. I actually like books about angels and demons with the religious aspect as well, because I just like different turns and twists on everything. So it is Kingdom of the Wicked. I will tell you, there's at least another book in the series, if not more. So that's what I hate. And I agree with Katie earlier, when we're really bad about picking up books that just came out and we're like, oh my God, they're so good. And then we have to wait that interminable time of waiting. Oh my God, it's 3 years. Who's going to write that? I'm still waiting on the most recent Game of Thrones book by George R.R. Martin. So I feel the pain, but I think that seriously, that book best be real good when it does come out. But this one, Kingdom of the Wicked, it's great. I love the characters, and I urge you all to pick it up. So with that said, we will have our next book talks again in 2 weeks. I was thinking that it was Thanksgiving, but actually Thanksgiving's in 3 weeks. So we will see you all 14 days from now. So peace out.
Bye.
Reading.